Good morning, it's sportsbookreview.com. I'm Flash, and this is a brand new show. We're going to march into madness, the NCAA. They talk about madness in March. Well, after what we witnessed over the weekend, the madness has already started, so I need two mad professors with me. I've got Maxwell Smart, normally Marcus, and the right side, Donnie, two absolute gurus. Good morning, gentlemen.
Doing good here. Thanks for tuning in. And this is our first show here. This is wonderful to have because I'm a huge proponent of morning shows. You know me, Flash. I don't drink coffee. I drink Monster Ultra Zeros. But in the morning, nothing gets me charged up like cracking open the computer. It used to be a newspaper that we used. But getting into the daily stuff that we have for college basketball. Love that Max is here. That guru that you need to carry the show. Me and Flash should be a nice wingman. This is going to be a lot of fun. Welcome in. I'm excited, guys. I really am.
Dr. Maxwell Smart, I hope you had a great weekend. We saw some unbelievable action that went right down to the last second and then the last second of overtime.
Yeah, absolutely. Really exciting weekend of basketball. This is what college basketball is all about. It's a perfect time to transition from football over to college basketball. We're going to keep you entertained. We're going to keep you informed. And most importantly, we're going to put you on winners.
Okay, well, the way we're going to go, Max and Donnie, we're going to go with a review, hot topics, and then we'll start looking at tonight's cards and make sure we get all the value out there early. My internet is down, so Donnie's going to be the one looking after the chat. So if you've got any questions, remember this is your show. You fire them to him and he'll shout them out. And then obviously Dr. Max and Dr. Donnie, they will sort you out and give you the right remedy that will be winners. Start off with Baylor keeps the top spot with a 78-70 win over Oklahoma State, Max.
Yeah, this was a nice win for Baylor. They were able to start early with getting their three-point shot on point. They fed Freddie Gillespie, but once again, I have to point out, this is another spot that Baylor did not cover as a double-digit favorite, so we have to be cautious when we're laying our money on this team. But from a win-loss perspective, this was a game that they had to stop Thomas Dzagwa from coming off the bench for Oklahoma State and burning them from the three-point line. They were able to do that, and I think that Baylor, a lot of people are looking for them to slip up and lose the game. I don't know, based on the schedule the next couple games, if we can expect that. And going into Texas tonight is definitely going to be quite the matchup for viewers and for cappers altogether.
Dr. Donnie, we look at number 2. The Zags smash St. Mary's by 30 points, 90-60. They're 25-1, and they're chasing Baylor.
No, they're amazing. I mean, I got to tell you, for a late night basketball game on a Saturday night, and this is one of the games that we usually look forward to out in the West Coast Conference each year. These two teams battle each other. Gonzaga usually gets the upper hand, but we usually see a good fight out in Moraga from St. Mary's. Didn't happen, but then again, Max and Flash, when you look at this game, did you expect like 14 to 15 shots, I believe they started out the game, Gonzaga, and it shot 73% from the floor on the road and dusted them by 30 points. Gonzaga, it seems year after year after year, because we're going to talk a little bit later on some topics like where do we think Gonzaga might wind up in that 1 seed, which is always a hot argument. They were so impressive on Saturday night that you look at the rest of their schedule and say, I don't see a loss on it, but even more of that, is this the year that now that we don't have those true frontline superstar basketball teams, that Gonzaga can finally cut the nets down? I'm looking forward to it.
The big one for those that don't really know everything about the NCAA is San Diego State. 24-0, not ranked number 1. They head the Mountain West. This is the year of anyone could win, Max.
Absolutely. With San Diego State, we've all been enjoying watching this ride at 24-0 from a win-loss perspective. But more importantly, Flash, what did San Diego State do against Air Force in their own gym? They were able to get out in transition. They were able to feed Yanni Wetzel the basketball. And more importantly, they cashed a ticket for us on the spread and on the over. With the San Diego State team, it's going to be really up to them whether or not they stay undefeated, because with their schedule upcoming, I don't really see a loss. I only see a slip up if they decide not to take a game seriously.
Donnie, I think without doubt, and we was all commenting while it was going on, it was Duke going into the Tar Heels' backyard, and in the very last second, the lad didn't even know he'd scored the winning basket, and they get the job done again.
I mean, when you look at this basketball game, and I know we went back and forth, you were watching the game as well on Saturday night, and you're saying, oh my goodness, UNC, look at this, their star player comes back, they're going to be able to handle the Duke. Is this going to be a forward process for them making the tournament? And it all fell apart. What, they have a 13 or 14 point lead with 4 minutes to go at home. What do you do in those times, Flash? How do you seal games? Just make some free throws and don't turn the basketball over. They didn't make free throws. They turned the basketball over, and they got freak plays from Duke on the opposite side. You're talking about 4 guys in the paint, 1 guy with Duke on a free throw, and he's able to tip the ball back on offensive rebounds. Unbelievable to send it to overtime. Even more unbelievable shot, Flash, to win it for Duke. And again, we're going to talk about a game coming up a little bit later tonight. Is there going to be some lag effect for the Duke Blue Devils after those kids, Flash? They were celebrating on Saturday night. Quick turnaround, playing a good basketball team in Florida State tonight.
Yeah, listen, this is a massive test for them because obviously the emotional side of things, they would have been high, wake up. There's nothing for a couple of days. And then you've got to pick yourself up and go again. And the thing is with Duke, they give the other team absolute momentum in games, and they find a way to get victory out of the jaws of defeat. Max, ranked 12, Seton Hall. Big East looks like theirs, and they win in Philadelphia for the first time since 1994. Even I was young then.
Yeah, with Seton Hall, definitely did a great job going into a hostile environment versus a team that really relies on the three-point shot and then shut you down inside. And what did Seton Hall do? They took it inside. They scored inside early. They really set the tone. And then in the second half, when you get to the free throw line, you make your free throws, it ends up coming into factor. And when I look at this Seton Hall team, you get a semi-good performance from Miles Powell where he was under 50% from the field, but they can still win games because they get good contributions off the bench, specifically from Jared Rhoden. And I think that with McKnight running the point for this team, I think that the sky's the limit, and they're playing in a tough conference that is going to get them ready for the extremities of March. So Seton Hall with a great game against Villanova. I think that it rewarded their bettors, and it also infused the fan base heavily.
Donnie, Houston absolutely whipped Wichita State, and Houston now first in the American at 9-2, and Cincinnati fell to the Huskies.
Yeah, Wichita State leveling up over the past couple of years in conference play. As we like to say here, Flash, we're not in Kansas anymore for Wichita. Certainly stepped out of bounds and went to Houston and got absolutely drubbed. But also on the opposite side, me and Max have joked that, one of the better names in college basketball is A Cook, which, we like to use another term. Maybe if you haven't pronounced it correctly, it's more fun to say it another way. But an impressive win in that basketball game by UConn. Maybe one of those talented teams that can make a run when they get to the conference tournament. But Houston looked really good. I mean, this team is built for tournament tough. You're talking about a team that can improve on offense, but plays absolutely stellar defense. But I was more impressed by the UConn win. This team always intrigues me at this time of year. And if you watch Hurley's antics on the sidelines, seems like he's going to get teed up just about every other minute. Kind of annoying if you bet against UConn and keep on seeing his face on the TV screen. But when you have him on your side, and that win yesterday, covering in overtime, was a certainly really big revelation. By the way, Flash, got a couple things here in the chat box going on here. And look at this from Guan White. I'm ready for the Charleston Southern UC Upstate breakdown. I know Max is as well.
Wow, Max, you'd better get your thinking head on for that one. But let's go to the Patriot League, where Colgate won their last 6 from 7, but next 2 games are on the road. And the first one is against nearest rivals, Boston, for whoever goes to number 1.
Yeah, the reality is this Boston University team has already played Colgate. It was a misleading score by my estimations because without 20 turnovers, Boston University wins that game outright. I think that they're definitely going to be playing with some revenge tonight. They're on a 5-game winning streak. We've seen Max Mahoney, Walter White, and Javante McCoy really put in work. These are guys that can give you double-digit scoring. These are guys that are going to get on the glass and do a good job of distributing the basketball. And what has BU done during this streak? 15.2 assists per game, versus 9.5 turnovers. I think that if you cut down on the turnovers versus this Colgate team, you take away a lot of their transition opportunities. And with dominant guard play from Jordan Burns and Nelly Cummings, that's going to be imperative tonight for BU. But from a overall Patriot League perspective, because I am known as the Patriot League governor, it is a fantastic league for you to watch. It's a fantastic league for you to bet on. And just going over the weekend action, there's a lot of great games from a betting perspective and from an entertainment perspective. We saw the American Eagles versus Army be able to get some revenge versus Army. Army basically lost that game because their main guy, Tommy Funk, the Funk Master himself, only had 13 points and 7 assists. If you want Army to win games for you and cash tickets for you, you cannot have Lonnie Grayson leading your team in scoring. Although I will tip my hat to him with 17 points on 6 for 10 for shooting from the field, it's just not the type of offensive box score stat that I want to see that's going to end up getting Army a couple wins. And lastly, I will point out Loyola Maryland could be a team that could be starting to be a team to bet on in the Patriot League. Now they have Santi Aldama, the highly recruited international, back in the lineup to go along with Golden Dyke and then Kevon Scott. This is a dominant front court for Loyola Maryland, and we know what they have in the backcourt with Andrew Kosteka. So there's a lot of inside-out scoring for this team, and I think that they're going to be a team on the rise the next couple games of the conference season. You're
going to get some value then. They're 4-8, Max. 4-8. They're sitting third from bottom in the Patriot. But you look at this, and it's Boston now. They're sitting at number 2 in the conference, but you fancy they're going to be the winners. I tell you what, we're going to get some value. Let's get on Boston against Colgate. Donnie, a recap of the Atlantic 10 and Dayton at 10-0. They look the real deal.
No, they certainly looked the real deal as well. St. Louis even gave them a battle in that 71-65 game on Saturday. I mean, you're looking at one of these teams that they're primed and ready to get it. It's almost like you don't want to skip over the rest of the A-10, season or even the conference play, because this team does have a lot of higher goals to hit than just winning the A-10 here. But they are certainly a formidable opponent to go through. Obi Toppin, one of the best players in the country, certainly going to be up for the Naismith Basketball Player of the Year. Other games that you take a look at, because these road up, there's a lot of value in the A-10, a lot of really good basketball teams that sometimes fly under the radar. We see a couple here in the city of Philadelphia. They even squared off St. Joseph's, not having that season they wanted. Phil Martelli gets fired last year, trying to get into that new wave. LaSalle's been down for the past couple years. It'd be nice to elevate it, because remember, not too long ago, well, maybe in my years, where St. Joseph's was making runs to the Elite Eight with Jameer Nelson and Delonte West. But overall looking, the one that I want to throw this to Max for a little bit here. I'm one of those gluttons for punishment, which Max and me and Max have a little bit of a kindred spirit here. We love the lower level competitions. If you follow my timeline, I'm tweeting Metro Atlantic, I'm tweeting, Mid-American play. I love the Sun Belt. I'm the flag bearer for Arkansas Little Rock basketball over here. But when we take a look, teams like Fordham, I try to get as much information as, and I find myself saying, is Ertan Ghazi going to play? Be like, who the hell is Ertan Ghazi? Who's going to be back into the lineup? This team that routinely scores in the 50s, Max. I'm trying to find ways to take team totals over with Fordham. How do you feel about betting these conferences? Because I know you love the Patriot. I know you love the lower levels. We're even going to go over some MEAC basketball on this show today. But finding value and surfing the internet, because information is so hard to find, but we love it, Max.
Yeah, with Fordham, it's really been a key for me in being able to understand this team is watching them. We've seen them really struggle with injuries. We've seen personnel coming in and out. We've seen guys develop before our very eyes. We saw in the game against Richmond on the weekend, they had that game and they let it slip away. Richmond's looking at that game as a blunder, as something that they're going to have amnesia about. But the reality is, Fordham is a dangerous team when they are a 10-point dog or more at home. This is a team that plays in a small gym. They get a lot of home good court atmosphere, and I think that with this Fordham team, you're going to find value because the numbers are always going to be in the 115 to 125 range, and a lot of college basketball teams at this time of year start to perform above what the expectations are so far.
I don't think we can let anything get away from us when we talk about the weekend without mentioning LSU versus Auburn. LSU scored 90 points in their last 2 games and come away 0-2. Auburn, they stuck to it. I look at this LSU side, And I think they've got the arrogance to actually go all the way in a one-off situation, knock out the brackets, because they just seem to think we'll outscore you, we've got enough, and yet they keep getting found out at the very end, Donnie.
Yeah, you know what's interesting, because watching not the game that they just lost there in that exciting game and going back and forth in overtime, but the game against Vanderbilt was interesting to me because LSU does have everything you need. They have guard scoring, they have big low, down low action. You also have a very good coach, but it's amazing where sometimes you even run up to teams that haven't won in like 2 years in conference play with Vanderbilt, and they go ballistic from the 3-point line. Sometimes, Flash, that's also a really good teaching when said, hey, look, man, we can't just roll in and go play in Nashville and Vanderbilt and seem to come out with a victory, because those other teams have scholarship athletes too. Good learning tool for LSU moving forward. Talented team, Flash. And I agree with this market that we're looking at heading into March Madness. A lot of these teams are going to have huge value moving forward. LSU is certainly one of them.
Yeah, I mean, that was an absolute freak from Vanderbilt. You had Saban Lee, Scottie Pippen Jr. and Maxwell Evans. I think they got 77 points between the three of them. Two of them went over 30 points. And they're normally around the 59 mark, and yet they put up 99 on a really, really strong outfit, Max.
Yeah, I think that it's really just like Donnie said. Sometimes you're gonna find value on teams like LSU, and you just have to be able to see these bumps in the road, which is what the Vanderbilt game was. Listen, I give LSU all the credit, and I give even more credit to the people that backed LSU because they cashed their ticket. The fact is, when you have endings like that and you have shots that win games with not enough time to try and answer back, these are the results we're going to get. I think that with LSU, I think that both these losses are going to serve and help them build and get stronger for March. Listen, Flash, I put you and our friend Jimmy the Bag on a future for LSU. I'm standing by that. We're going to get you that. LSU is going to surprise, and if not, it's going to be Maryland, and if not, it's going to be Washington.
Well, I don't think it'd be Washington. And there's another topic that we must hit on, that Washington, I think, were like 7-3, 8-3. All of a sudden, their star man becomes ineligible because his grades are not good enough. And now they're out with the washing. They're out. They finished. No good. Next year, just on the back of one person being dropped from the side.
Yeah, I don't think that I would credit it all the quad A green. I think that it's execution. I think that it's defensive intensity. I think it's getting back and playing two-way defense and not letting your emotions get out of control. And that's exactly what happened against Washington State yesterday. Washington allowed themselves to get out of their flow, out of their game, and unfortunately, they allowed their emotions to affect them. It caused late game fouling. It probably cost them the game. Jaden McDaniels and Isaiah Stewart have a lot of growing to do as basketball players and as human beings, and I think that we're seeing how important point guard play is, especially in a very parity-filled Pac-12.
Donnie, do you think it's fair to say that anyone from 1 to 20 can actually win the NCAA B championship this year? Because there doesn't seem to be one standout side that you could rely on a knockout basis.
No, you're exactly correct, Flash. And that's what's going to be fun. And that's what the part of this show is, because when we started this show and they came up with the concept, March into Madness. And what that actually means is the show is going to get better from here all the way through, because all this value building up. Just wait for this show when we start kicking off on conference basketball play and when we actually head into the tournament. So many teams have so much value. And like we said to start the show, when you open it up, this is a show that's going to say, you know what, give you a couple thinking points, not only tonight when we start hitting some of these games and capping them, but also thinking about future. Like, man, Max really brought up a good point. Flash said something here that I hadn't heard before. Hey, Donnie said something about the Oregon squad, which moving forward, which might be a pretty good one. There's a lot of value 1 through 20. This show is going to help design to get you through. But getting back to the chat box here real quick here, Flash. Matt Randall says, smash that like button so we can support this show. Small thrill. Max, dressed like the first day of school. And Arthur Meek comes in. Flash Watson, I wish you the best on your new show. You are a class act. Now, Arthur Meek, he's always been in the chat box. If I didn't know any better, I would think, Flash, that was you in the chat box saying that.
Yeah, and he's definitely going to be taken away with the men in white coats. We're talking about madness. I will do well to get through March without going absolutely mental. Listen, let's wrap this up. Let's get on to hot topics. The Tar Heels put up one of the best performances I've seen from a team, and yet they're sitting at the bottom. Surely, Max, it's over for them.
Max is speechless on that. That was such a good topic by you, Flash, that he can't chime in on that one.
I pressed the mute button to stop the nose whistle that has become so famous on SBR
They
shows.
want that, Max. They want that. They know that a winning tip is coming just after the whistle because it's your head getting excited.
Yeah, well, I think that you have to be less excited for UNC's chances of making the big dance than you are for hearing my nose whistle. The fact is, at 3-9 in the conference, in a season that they really could have taken advantage based on the personnel on paper. It just hasn't worked to fruition. We've seen Roy Williams try and shorten the bench, change up the rotation to try and get a working and winning chemistry on the court, and it just hasn't facilitated so far. Right now, I think that UNC's loss to Duke, when you put up 96 points and still lose the game, is a telltale sign that maybe this is the year that we see the Tar Heels watching at home or playing in the NIT.
Yeah, well, and that's the big one that we've got to remember, that these boys who don't go to the big dance, there's other rewards for them. But then obviously we're looking at motivation. Are we looking at them feeling sorry for themselves? Oh, we didn't get to the NCAA champion. But if you actually tune in, you can actually go away as a winner. Donnie, loads of overtime games over the weekend. We had Temple, we had Boston, we had Alabama, we had Missouri. Pick the bones.
Yeah, no, there was some really good overtime games on Saturday. Real quick point on that North Carolina, just to expound on what Max was talking about. You have a 3-9 Carolina team, right? Which if they beat Duke, maybe you can see a path forward where they can possibly get back to 500 in the ACC. But this isn't the old ACC where you had, 10 legitimate teams that can make the tournament. This is a bottom feeder league. And also, before I get to these overtime games, Max, real quick on this one. This always brings up the next thing because you're talking about maybe they get into the NIT. Cole Anthony never sees the NIT, right, if North Carolina makes it.
Oh, absolutely not. He's going to be getting prepared for the draft. But I think personally, from watching North Carolina without Cole Anthony in the lineup, I think that in the NIT tournament, they could be dangerous. Obviously, we do have to worry about motivation, but when you're wearing that Tar Heel blue, you go on the court, you're expected to win. So I wouldn't expect Cole Anthony to see any time in the NIT, but Garrison Brooks and Armando Bacot, and then the grad transfers in Pearson Keeling, I would expect them to want to play in that tournament.
Yeah, get back to your point there, Flash, on some of the overtime games. The one I did watch, of course, right here from the city of brotherly love, the Temple game that goes into overtime. How about being down 17.5? How about getting booed by about, 3,000 people in a place that seats about 12,000 people? Not looking good for Aaron McKee's boys, fighting back even shorthanded. No Devondre Perry in that game. No J.P. Mormon. What a nice win by the Owls. I don't really think it's going to propel them to March Madness per se, but it's good to see Aaron McKee getting his foot in the door. A couple of nice home wins now, taking down SMU and also Wichita State, maybe springing forward there to play some good basketball heading into conference play. But overtimes are wild because, as we like to say in overtime, usually the dog goes to die, Flash, but the dog rose up and won in that game in Philadelphia.
Donnie, how do these teams, the team that springs to mind of giving up leads is Georgia. Georgia, I've seen in the last 2 weeks be up 20 points. So they're doing something right. And then an adjustment from the other team. They ended up losing both the games. How does that happen when you are so far ahead? Is it because they take their foot off the gas? Or is it that the other team have more of a desperation?
Yeah, you know what's interesting that you bring up, Flash, because we're talking about college kids here. Anywhere between 18 to 19, 20, 21-year-olds. They react differently to stressed environments and situations. It's the same way that Georgia will lead, the same way that Carolina blows a lead. The coach can only instill so much. We still have to remember that these are young kids playing on a huge stage where when some things go wrong and adversity hits, they're not used to handling it all that well. That's usually the case as opposed to the other team coming back and saying, you know what, let's just go 10 of 11 from the field, 7 of 8 from three-point range over the last 5 minutes and steal it. It's usually errors on the team with the lead, which allows for the other team to come back.
Yeah, and it goes, as we always say about the momentum, but I always think that with these young boys, it's a fear of winning. It's not the fear of losing, it's the fear of winning that catches them out. There's so many teams, and I tell you what, value, Max, You love it when you take a team from behind.
Absolutely. What have I kept on preaching throughout college basketball season? Two things. One being, there is always a tale of two halves in a number of games on every day's board. Secondly, what do a lot of these coaches tell their teams when they're down by double digits at the half? It's 2 games within one. We lost the first game. Let's go out and win the second game. And that's going to provide a lot of value to us as bettors. I think that we have to take notice of what we're seeing and what the trends are in college basketball when it comes to teams having big leads. And Boston College, Missouri, these are teams that a lot of us were on the other sides on Saturday. And I think that with good execution, we saw what happens. And when you see a team have a poor first half, have a better showing in the second half, and then go to overtime, who are you going to hit in overtime on the live spread when you're watching Live Line? Well, you better hit that home dog. And Missouri and Temple proved why on the weekend.
Okay, well, I'm going to stay with you, Max, because Joe Lunardi has Rutgers at 8th in the big dance. They're right on the cusp. They can't afford to slip up. They may not make it. So do you agree that they should be 8th?
I think that they're going to make the tournament, but when you have that type of performance versus Northwestern last night, it definitely leaves you with a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth. The fact is, we've talked about Rutgers through a lens that has highlighted their perseverance and their ability to play within the situation and get the win at the end of the game. When I saw the Northwestern Rutgers first half, it had me heavily disappointed because there was not enough focus on going inside with the basketball. If you have a size and strength advantage, which you did with Harper Jr., Miles Johnson, you have to exploit it. And you cannot have this inconsistent shooting from Geo Baker. Otherwise, regardless of what seed they get in for the tournament, they'll be out after the first weekend.
Donnie, Gonzaga, San Diego State, had an unbelievable season thus far. It can only go downhill from now unless they go on and win it. Do they stay top of the tree through March Madness?
I think they do. I mean, at least heading into it and getting those top seeds. I don't see Gonzaga losing a game the rest of the way. They got St. Mary's again, but they do have them at home. And then maybe the West Coast Conference where you play on a neutral court. Maybe St. Mary's can come back and snip them. But from what we've seen, especially from the last game, I don't think that's going to be possible. And then San Diego State, clearly the front runner in their conference. Maybe getting some damage in that last game versus Nevada. But even if they go in with one loss, they probably go through and win the conference tournament. I see both of those teams as a number one. And also that says a lot about college basketball as a total because you don't have one of those, blue bloods, because Baylor's already going to be on the one line, but those 3 or 4 or 5 teams up there with maybe 1 or 2 losses, which was always the conflict of interest over the past couple of years. What, does Gonzaga get a number 1? Did they get a number 1 seed? Well, they have to be unbeaten because there's 4 teams out there in power conferences with 1 or 2 losses. How can you seed them number 1? I don't see it as clear cut, but those 2 teams, they should be 1 and 2, number 1 line teams heading into March Madness. They both deserve it.
Okay, I want you both to answer this, obviously not at the same time. I'm going to start with you, Donnie. Without doubt, the conference that is really heating up is the Southeastern. We've got Auburn at 11, Kentucky at 15, and LSU at 18, all 8 and 2. Who wins it, Donnie?
Just looking at conference play without adding in the conference tournament, I think it's got to be Auburn because when you look at, they got the tiebreaker by beating LSU. It's not a true round-robin league, and what that means is not everybody plays each other twice because of how large the SEC is. They already have the victory versus LSU. They beat Kentucky. They do have a road game at Kentucky coming up, but I like Auburn here just where that's at. Even though all 3 of these teams are sitting tied up in the SEC, they just have enough to get over the top and also the tiebreaker in hand. I'm going to go with Auburn wins the regular season SEC here, Flash.
Max, we're definitely going to see all 3 of them in the bracket stage. Do you think that they might just take their foot off the gas and say, well, we're okay, we've just got to stay healthy, and we'll see you when it matters?
I don't think that that's going to happen, just because if you set that precedent with your team and you allow your guys to take a game off, well, that soon turns, in my opinion, into their own individual revolts. Well, I don't feel like playing. I don't feel like playing on defense. I don't feel like running the court. It sets a dangerous precedent to allow players and coaches to take games off. I think that they're going to be very intense. I think that they're going to play every game as hard as they can. And I think that when you look at the coaches and the personality of the coaches, specifically from Will Wade and John Cal and Bruce Pearl, these are guys that don't want to lose regardless of the situation, whether it's an exhibition game, a team overseas, or a game in conference.
So are you going to sit on the fence, or are you going to tell me who's going to win the SEC?
Well, listen, by the standings right now, Donnie's right. Auburn has all the factors pointing towards them winning the regular season conference title. But in reality, it only sets up seeding for the conference tournament, and that's the big deal.
Okay, so you're going to go with Auburn as well. Obviously I'm going to be biased towards LSU until they get knocked out, and hopefully on the very final day of March Madness, we're sitting here cheering on LSU. I mean, Watford, Javonte Smart, we've got Skylar Mays, Darius Days. They've got an unbelievable five that I'm going to be cheering for my life. Right, hot topics done. Review of the weekend done. Let's put some meat on the bone and how we're going to win money. I'm coming to you first, Max. And we're going to go to the Florida State. 3rd of December was the last time they got beat against a very sloppy Duke. That's on ESPN tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, for me, it's a dangerous situational spot for Duke. You're going up against a Florida State team that can really burn you from the three-point line. This is a team that shoots over 40% from there. This is a team in Florida State that gets off to a good start. And I think that when you look at this Duke team situationally, it could be a spot where there is value on Florida State at the number. By my numbers, I had Duke about 6.5 point favorite. So looking at the line right now at 8.5 or 9 or 8, there is value there, a small amount, nothing official for the show, but I would lean towards Florida State in this game purely from a number perspective and a situational spot.
Well, more of a situational spot, Donnie, because Duke are so sloppy. They just do enough. We'll win, don't worry. We've got confidence in ourselves, but they let the other team have a big lead. You're going to take the 8.5 points for sure.
You know what's interesting about this, Flash? Because this is one of those games that, you try to think outside the box. Because if you're just looking at numbers and you're saying, boy, it's really hard to beat Duke at home, we get all that. We understand it. But let's not forget this game was played on Saturday night. 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock tip, whatever it was, gets into overtime. You beat your biggest rival. You know you're coming home to party, right, in this basketball game? And then you have that quick turnaround. And you don't get to play like a sleepy type team coming in where, I'm not knocking Notre Dame or Virginia Tech coming to town, but you have a really good team that already had your game circled with Florida State, already destroyed on Saturday, Miami of Florida coming in. And I got to tell you, I look at this line, I'm saying, it's probably going to see this around like 6, maybe 5.5, like Max was talking about. 8.5s were across the board, which still some outlets offshore, now dipping down to 8. And I agree. Now, also, if we take a look at the overall game, do I think Duke's going to win this game? I still think they do. But this is one of those where I like to isolate maybe and take a first half where maybe Duke really coming into this game, partied it up Saturday, got to shoot around in Sunday. Because, again, when you're talking about a normal road team, sometimes you got to fly in. Let's just say you're flying from Tallahassee or Miami back to North Carolina. You only went about 8 or 10 miles across town to play North Carolina and back home. So that's not going to be an issue. But I think Duke might be a little bit slow to start in this game, especially with that overtime game. Give me the 4.5 in the first half here with Florida State. I think it'll be close. I think Duke wins it overall. But I think they might get out of the gates a little bit slow due to all that environment that they were dealing with on Saturday night, Flash.
Yeah, I think you take Florida State plus 8.5. And then in play, you reverse it. You take the Duke to come back, and you have both sides, and you never know, for one game, you could well have two winners. Yeah. Let's go to the 9 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. We're going to have the Baylor Bears against the Longhorns, and you go, Donnie.
Yeah, this should be an interesting one, because, again, Baylor, when's the last time they lost? November? College basketball was being played in the first week of November. Donnie? Was the last time they lost. So we're taking a look at some spreads here. And even when we update and see exactly what's going on in this game, let me just get a full look here. First half 3, full game, opened up 6.5, now down to 5.5. So if you were listening early in the show where Max said, hey, look, sometimes this team fumbles away covers at the end of basketball games, you're looking at the betting public saying, you know what, Max, I agree, 6.5 down to 5.5. But when we get in the Shaka Smart's Texas squad, is it something that you really want to rely on? Yes, they play decent at home. Yes, they have a chance. But Baylor is locked in. I think they get the job done tonight. Not so much going into X's and O's. Both teams played Saturday, so it is still a quick turnaround coming here on Monday night. Baylor's the better basketball team. I think they get the winning cover in this one. Not enough to put my money on. I feel a little bit better about that Florida State game as opposed to this one, Flash.
Yeah. Max, the Bears, 5.5. It seems very, very skinny. And it looks like, for once, they might cover. Max, you've muted yourself again, you mad man. Listen,
the hot mic over there. Yeah.
If it's too early for you, we'll start at 9:31, just to give you that extra minute to get your brain in gear.
Yeah, it's a really interesting number. Absolutely. I had this game lined at 9.5 for Baylor, so there is value. It does make me question if my number is correct. The fact is, when you look at Baylor and you look at the performances, I alluded to it a little earlier. This is a team that has to establish their three-point shot and really focus on getting Freddie Gillespie involved in the offense early to have that kind of balance that you need to cover spreads on the road. I think coming off 2 ATS losses, I think that it is a spot where I will be looking at Baylor. I will not be looking at Baylor full game for the show. I do see and have an edge when it comes to the first half. Baylor's outscoring their opponents +9 versus Texas in first halves. I think that with Texas, they're going to struggle to get to 30 points in the first half. I expect Baylor to get to 37. I expect them to cover the first half, and I'd like to make that my first official pick on the show. I'm going to take Baylor first half -3.5 or 4, depending on what you can get out your book. So let me just do a quick little bit of line shopping right here, and then I can give you an exact odds and number for the show. So what I see is I see a 3 at Pinnacle, which I'm not going to take at -120 juice. I will take the 5 dimes number at -3.5 at -110. That will be my first official play. And I also have a play when it comes to the under in this game. When we look at Baylor, we think that Baylor is going to be more up and down, but that is not the case. This is a team in Baylor that is going to lock you down from the field, lock you down from the three-point line, and Texas does an admirable job of doing that themselves. These are two teams that are going to do a good job of defending the three-point line, which is going to be critical if you are betting on the under. And with Texas, they don't get to the free throw line as often as a lot of other Big 12 teams, and that benefits us. I have this game lined at 125.5 to 126.5, and at 128 or 128.5, I find that there's enough value to warrant making a play on this under.
Okay, so I love the -3.5 at half time. I think you just go with a -4 and get yourself a little bit more juice, a little bit more value. Let's move on to ESPN2, 9 p.m. Texas Tech hosts TCU, Donnie.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting game to look at here. Real quick in the chat box, it's popping off. It's live. Over 200 people watching this early in the morning from everybody at SBR. We thank you for a new show tuning in, giving us the support. We're going to have a lot of fun here right up through the Final Four in the championship game. So we do appreciate it, both Max and Flash, as well as myself. But in the chat box, Barry McCockiner coming into the chat box hot saying he's with the Baylor gang. Jansen says Texas is awful. Cash Action Bets likes Texas. And also, if we take a look at some of these numbers out here, Texas lost 2 starters late in the last game, Gabriel says in that one. So chat box, thank you for tuning in. Looking at the game tonight, TCU versus Texas. You know me, Flash. You know me, Max. I like team totals, and I usually like team totals over. But I got to tell you, looking at this game for Texas Tech on the defensive side versus TCU, look at TCU in conference play, guys. 49 points versus West Virginia, 63 versus Oklahoma, 65 versus Texas Tech, 61 versus Texas, 52 versus Baylor, 57 versus Oklahoma State, and 46 versus Kansas. You got to be kidding me in this game. If I'm looking anywhere in this game, I want an under on that wretched offense from TCU. I think Texas Tech locks in here. How about this one? 58.5 is a team total. Give me the under on this one.
I'll tell you what, I was quaking in my boots there with that schedule. Kansas, Oklahoma State, I'm thinking, gee, Baylor, wow, they've had a tough time of it. Max, where's the value?
Yeah, to add on to Donnie's point, because I'm not on mute this time, TCU doesn't get to the free throw line. They don't make a good percentage of their free throws. Texas Tech does a good job with Chris Clark and T.J. Holyfield of getting the ball inside. And the fact is, with the limited amount of three-point shot attempts that this Texas Tech team is putting up, they're hitting a respectable percentage. And I think that at this number, it's hard to take TCU for a lot of the points that Donnie made, and it's hard for me to lay the 10 points with Texas Tech. So for me, there's not going to be an official play. I would lean toward Texas Tech in the first half to see how the start happens, but this is a second half play or an in-game play for me.
Okay, under the 58.5 from Donnie is your play there. Let's move on and let's take it down a notch or two. But in popularity, it could well be going up a notch or two, and it's Portland State versus Northern Colorado. Max.
Yeah, this is a spot for Northern Colorado that I see the number going against them, and I'm not really understanding why. They've done a good job of benefiting their backers so far this year, and I think coming off a really nice road win against Southern Utah, I think that Northern Colorado's in a prime spot to take care of business at home. What have they done at home? They've beaten up on some of the lower tier competition in the conference, but this Portland State team, if you can shut down Holland Woods from the field, which has been accomplished, I think that this is a spot where I think that there's going to be value on Northern Colorado. I do see the number moving the other way so far on them, opening up at 10.5 and all the way down to 8.5 at Pinnacle and a couple other books. I think that Northern Colorado is the play. I'm going to get on them at 8.5. I know that I'm laying a lot of points, but I do think that with Bodie Hume and Jonah Radenbow, they're going to be able to stop the combination of Alonzo Walker and Marcus Golder, the Valparaiso transfer. I think this Portland State team definitely wants to get up and down, but they're going up against a Northern Colorado team that can really stifle you, slow you down, and frustrate you and not let you get out in transition. Teams that guard in transition like Northern Colorado are teams that I can back even at this number, and I'm going to make it official for the show and take them minus 8.5 at minus 113.
Nice one, Maxie boy. We love it when you add on official play. Johnny, you got anything on that? Or do you want to fly into your mid-major madness? If you have got a play, then fire away. But then go into Charleston Southern versus USC Upstate, which is a 6 p.m. ESPN Plus tonight.
Yeah, you know, that Portland State, Northern Colorado, makes it real interesting because I like to always look at, same thing with like we talk about boxing, like styles make fights. If a guy's a big puncher, a counter puncher. If we look at this game, Max, I have a question for you real quick. Portland State's offense, decent. You know, Northern Colorado's defense, very good. But when we take a look at the styles here from 3-point range, just looking in conference play, 27% of the shots from Portland State come from 3-point range on their offense. That's what they're comfortable doing. Almost identical when we take a look at Northern Colorado, 26%, which is number one in the conference, where they don't allow you to shoot. So if we're looking at that from a microcosm, it looks like Portland State says, all right, well, if you don't let us shoot threes, we really don't need that many. But 2-point shots where they get their points from. Number one in the conference is Portland State's offense. About 61% of their offense comes from inside the arc. But then we take a look at Northern Colorado's defense, Max. They're number one in the conference at giving up points from 2-point range as opposed to the arc. Does that factor in, or you just say, you know what, it's going to be a home team here. They're going to really be able to press the Portland State defense. That's the edge I'm looking for. But I always find it interesting when you take a look at teams that say, hey, they're going to let you shoot the three-pointer, and we love to shoot the three-pointer. This isn't the case in this one. It looks like it's a pretty good matchup down low between Portland State and Northern Colorado here.
Yeah, I think that with 2 points, with 2-point scoring buckets, specifically for Northern Colorado, this is a team that does a good job. They make 28 2-point buckets a game. They shoot 47% as of late. The 3-point shot, I think, is going to be the difference offensively for Northern Colorado because they don't do a good job of getting to the line. And I think that they're going to be able to frustrate Portland State into forced turnovers and keep them off the line because that's something that I feel that in their offense is critical if they're going to be able to cover spreads. So Yeah, I think that Northern Colorado just at home is going to be able to match up. And I think that when you can go bucket for bucket with what Portland State wants to do on offense and then be able to lock down on defense with a little bit of liability from inside the three-point range, I still like Northern Colorado. This is more play on my own created lines more than anything.
Donnie, mid-major madness, you love it. Charleston Southern, USC Upstate, 6 p.m. tonight on ESPN+.
Yeah, Big South action, ESPN Plus. If you guys don't have it, what is it, like $4.99? It is a genius thing to use. Watch all these games. Only crackheads like us, as we say, really enjoy these games. But these are the levels that you can certainly find some edges on. -1 for Charleston Southern out there. If we look in conference play, and I used because like you try to mix in what the eyeball test goes with, and you try to mix in some analytics. KenPom's a great site. There's a lot of really good sites out there that you can use in conference play now that these teams are matching up. Because if we take that whole season-long approach, do we really care if like Charleston Southern matches up against Kentucky? Yeah, they're not going to score a lot of points. Yes, their defense is going to get abused. But in conference play, effective field goal percentage, Charleston Southern is #1. That means they get the nice mix of getting to the free throw line, making the three-point shots, 2-point range. If we look at this game and what it comes down to also, you're looking at the #1 free throw team in the conference, Max. Almost 77% from the line, shooting 57% from inside the arc, and also very respectable 37% from the three-point line. I mean, slight favorite here. One, depending on where you're shopping at, I'm leaning Charleston Southern. Not enough to put my money on, but certainly an interesting game to try to take a look at here.
Max, any money going on?
I think that with Charleston Southern, Donnie, you're seeing Philandros Fleming really step up into a role that is a difference maker, a scoring, breaking machine. And I think that it's going to be critical for him to be able to get his offense tonight against USC Upstate. The fact is, both these teams have been playing games to the over. USC Upstate has gone 4 games over in a row with an over-under margin of 5 to 31 points, and that's not including any games that went to overtime. This USC Upstate team is a comeback team in the second half. They have a problem keeping it non-sloppy in the first half. That's where I see the value. I see Charleston Southern with at least a 3-point edge on the first half. There's value there from that perspective. But the spot that I like is the over. The fact is, like you alluded to just now, both teams are good free throw shooting teams. Charleston Southern and USC Upstate both hit over 75% from the line. And I think that when you're combined 15-9 over in the conference with a lot of games in this point range, I think that's a good telltale sign that this could be a spot to get on the over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on Charleston Southern first half, and I'm going to get on the over full game.
So Charleston Southern first half and over full game. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 6 games. I want to find out where you feel. If you haven't got a play, just say pass and let's rattle through these. UNC Asheville versus Hampton, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. ESPN Plus, Max.
Yeah, this is a spot where I'm definitely looking at Hampton as a home favorite. When you have Jermaine Merrill and Benjamin Stanley combining for God knows how many points together, that's the type of scoring duo that wins you games and cashes tickets for you. Listen, the fact is they need a good start. Hampton has been going over in their games, so that's always a good thing. If Hampton's going to win this game, this is going to be an up-and-down game. Hampton's a more efficient offensive team, and I think that they win this game by margin based on my created lines. Both teams shoot volume free throws, 48 attempts combined. Hampton's going to be have the advantage on the glass, and when it comes to the turnover department, and when you can get second chance opportunities and get to the free throw line, and you can force your opponent into turnovers, I think that's going to lead to fast breaks for Jermaine Merrill. I think that although they are 3-11 ATS at night, this is a team that is going to take care of business at home in a game where they didn't play their best the first time out. I think that they play a lot more solid, a lot more complete, and they take care of business. So give me Hampton -2, please.
Donnie, any view, or do you want to go to Radford versus Winthrop? Again, 7 p.m. ESPN Plus.
Yeah, I don't have that much on the next game here, but this game I really like also when we're talking about Max. Look, if you haven't watched Hampton play, they are a lot of fun. Tremendous scoring, tremendous pace. Let's also not forget UNC Asheville also plays with tremendous pace. Max, you know what I've been having a lot of success on this year is not so much with Hampton itself, but actually taking the opposite team and we talk about here at sportsbookreview.com. Check out the books that we offer because there are books out here on the extra games that get these lines out early and get team totals for the extra lines out early. Taking the team total over the team that plays opposite Hampton. We know Hampton's going to score, but you know what we know even more? Hampton's not going to defend on the opposite side. I think this is a great spot for UNC Asheville to score. Both of these teams, to me, Max, can get into the 80s, so that 160.5, which is a really big line in college basketball. I think both teams at least play into the 70s, which gives you a shot at that total. But the one thing I usually know is the teams that play Hampton can usually get scoring and get their scoring right. I haven't checked the team total yet out on 5 dimes or even a local here for UNC Asheville. That's something I'm interested in here, even though I do think Hampton wins this basketball game.
Donnie, go looking for the team totals, my lad. Max, give me Radford Winthrop because I want to get to the game afterwards because I think it's the biggest play of the day. Radford versus Winthrop.
Okay, so this is a 1 versus 2 in the Big South, a big game. Obviously, it's a revenge spot. Radford losing by 5 at home to Winthrop. Winthrop 16-7 ATS on the season, so they've rewarded their bettors, but extreme unders. 9-2 so far to the under in conference, 8.5 point margin for the under on average. And the fact is, this 3-point defense is going to be key for Winthrop tonight. They have to guard in transition, limit turnovers. And if you're Radford, you have to get to the free throw line. You have to make more of your free throws. This is a team that struggles from the free throw line. And it makes it hard to take them on the road. When I look at this Winthrop team, I think that they have the combination of inside play with DJ Burns and Josh Ferguson. And then you have Chandler Vaudrin and you have Hunter Hale on the perimeter. I think that with good ball distribution, Radford will be able to stay in this game. At this number, I look at Radford, but I'm not ready to make a play yet. Check out my Twitter later in the day. I will have an official play on this. But what I will do for the show is I will take this game under. I think that Winthrop has been playing games to the under. I think that Radford has tried to up the tempo, and I think it's worked against them. So I will take 141.5 to the under at -110 as an official show play.
Donnie, biggest game of the day for, I just love this, the Patriot League. Colgate at 10-2 take on the 9-3 Boston. How big are we going to go in on Boston?
You know what's interesting about this game too, Max? And Flash, when you look at it here, let's also not forget, like we talked earlier about the SEC conference, right? And how they're going to have seeding for the conference tournament, which usually takes place in like Atlanta, right? So you have neutral court. When we're talking about these smaller conferences, these games are even bigger because it gives you home court advantage in the conference tournament in order to get to the NCAA tournament. So this is going to be a big one because as we know, Colgate won the first battle. I'm going to stick with Colgate again here in this one. But if we take a look at, how about these matchups? Number 2 in the conference on offense versus number 2 in the conference on defense. Number 1 in the conference on offense, number 1 in defense with BU and Colgate. This is going to be a good one slightly, and I don't have an overly, impact in this game where I'd want to sway and say, hey, I know this is for sure. I think Colgate's the better team. I think they get it done, but not enough to put my money on here, guys.
Max, Colgate or Boston?
Yeah, I think that Boston University definitely has the first half numbers in favor of them. So I do think that at a +4 advantage based on my numbers, there is value on taking Boston University in the first half. But Colgate has proven over and over again so far this year, whether it be in conference or non-conference, they are a second half team. They can fall behind on the road where they are less efficient and less dominant. But I do think in the end, Colgate takes care of business in the end. But from a show perspective, my numbers like Boston University in the first half, and that's the play that I'm going to make. So I'm going to take Boston University -1, -108 on the first half.
Okay, we've got to move on. We've got North Carolina A&T versus Florida A&M, Donnie.
I'm not even going to embarrass myself with these next two. These are wheelhouse games, Flash, for Max. He is the expert in this conference. We're going to let him spin his knowledge and radiate out there, Max. Take it away, my friend.
You've got 3 minutes, Max. Fire away.
Okay, so with this NCAA team, we've seen them be a very good offensive team and good for overs. That's the play that I made official for the show. Check my Twitter. It's over on there, and we're going to be going with this this game over. The fact is, when you look at NCAA, they are decent on the road. They get to the free throw line. The question is, can they win on the glass, and can they give Florida A&M their first loss, because they're 5-0 and they beat Bethune-Cookman at home, which North Carolina A&T just recently lost to. I think that it's going to come down to, for this over, can both these teams continue to get second chance scoring? These are two teams that combine for 25 offensive rebounds a game. There's good ball distribution when it comes to assist and turnover ratio, and the 26 combined assists. Both teams force turnovers. The question will be, if 35 turnovers are forced, how many transition buckets can we expect to get from them? These teams have gone 13-7 to the over combined, and NCAA's 10-3 and over on the road at numbers that are way higher than this. I have this game lined at 148.5, at 142 or 142.5. It's still worth a play, and I think that NCAA definitely gets the win tonight and gives Florida A&M their first loss. So give me Cam Langley, give me Ronald Jackson. They'll take care of business for us, and they'll get the game over for us.
Last one, last but not least, Campbell versus Longwood, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and this ESPN Plus have got everything we need.
Yeah, for Campbell and Longwood, this is a simple spot. It's a revenge spot for Longwood. We're seeing them play a lot better with the contribution of Juan Munoz. You have Jalen Wilson. You have Jashawn Smith. You have David Citron. You have guys that can score the basketball. You have guys that can play defense. You have good length. The fact is, with Campbell, you're not going to get 25 and 11 from Cedric Henderson every game. I don't think he's going to be able to carry on that performance. That puts a lot more pressure on Corey Gensler. I don't think that they're going to be able to take care of business full game. The way that I look at this game is, it's going to stay under. Longwood games have stayed under in this point range. I think that trend continues today. Campbell has been stronger ATS in first halves and then been significantly weaker in the full game. There's a 13-point difference from first half performance to second half performances just in the last 5 games. The fact is, Longwood's more balanced. They make 11 threes a game, and I think that when you force 16 turnovers and you pressure ball handlers, that is going to play a factor in a Campbell team that wants to slow it down and wants to be more methodical in the half court. Give me Longwood full game under. Give me Longwood minus 1.5 on the full game. So the numbers are under 135.5, minus 108, and Longwood minus 1.5, minus 108.
Max, if I can ask you to tweet out all your official plays and your leans and hashtag March into Madness. Donnie, if you could do the same.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That is the quickest, longest, most informative news, topics, picks, 58 minutes of my life. I absolutely love that. And already I'm looking forward to the games tonight, but even more so, I'm looking forward to 9:30 Eastern Time tomorrow, where we go again and we get a day closer as we march into madness. Gentlemen, have a great day, and let's hope they're all winners. Cheers, boys. So that's our first edition, March into Madness, with Donnie and Maxwell Smart. We'll see you again tomorrow.